Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and Ranking Member for the continued diligence on this important issue. Mr. Phelan, I got some basic questions for you. Sorry for the basicness of the questions. You're in charge, right?
Yes, sir.
Who is do you have a technical background?
I do not have a technical background.
Who is the person directly reporting to you that is responsible for preventing another attack that we saw, like the one we saw a number of months ago?
So it is not a direct chain of command, but
Sorry, Mr. Phelan, if you can move that microphone, straighten it up, and right up next, there you go, thank you.
There we go, okay, thank you. There's no one specifically in my chain of command that is immediately responsible. We rely on Mr. DeVries and Mr. Chase as the CIO and the CISO to provide the security for the systems that we are operating today.
Copy. So, Mr. Chase, you're in charge.
That is correct for cybersecurity.
Well, thank you for running into the fire.
Thank you.
And I recognize the difficulty of the task. And in your brief remarks, you talked about the first step was getting OPM up to a baseline.
Correct.
Can you take 90 seconds?
Sure.
And explain that baseline?
That's a good question. So one of the things when I came on board was to set an appropriate strategy and a pathway forward. So it was the stabilization phase. So we understood that there were quite a few systems that were out of compliance. So we knew that we had to take steps to get those back into compliance. We also had another layer of engineering tasks which included network segmentation, making sure that we had the appropriate monitoring tools in place, and then the tuning process to support that. Throughout fiscal year 16, we were able to get those accomplished, but again, to a standard baseline where we feel comfortable that we can control our environment and we understand where we were with the IT system boundaries and the IT system boundary inventories.
So of the IG, GAO, and they've all done reviews. There's been a number of outstanding issues. Many of the outstanding issues for years had been on the IG report and the GAO high-risk report. Of those documents, how many of those vulnerabilities that have been identified are still outstanding?
So there are still items that are outstanding, and we prioritize them based on their criticality as identified.
What's the highest priority vulnerability that's still outstanding?
So the IT system compliance was the most significant vulnerability that was identified in the FY16 FISMA report, as well as the IT security officer hiring process, which is something we were able to accomplish at the end of this year as well.
Good copy. You talked about segmentation, and we saw that after the breaches in 14 and 15, the hackers were able to basically move, with impunity through the network. And my question is, what have you done to make life harder on the hackers that once they get past your defenses? And I would say begin with the presumption of breach. You give an attacker enough time and they have enough resources, they're going to get in. So what do you do once they get in? And how have you improved segmentation across the OPM network? So
I consider it a level of effort, so I'm trying to make it as hard as possible for them to get in, understanding that OPM is a customer-oriented agency and has to communicate. But some of the segmentation that we've done is identify all our major systems and high-valued assets within our environment, as well as all the privileged and non-privileged users. We've segmented those between each other and set the appropriate firewalls and monitoring tools to ensure that one can't get to the other and vice versa. And if there are attempts to get between one or the other, they're either stopped and flagged, and there's a follow-up with that event itself.
In my remaining minutes, I want to ask a question, and I don't mean to be indelicate. Why did we get to this situation? And I ask that question in order to learn from this experience so we can take those lessons learned and apply it across the federal government.
So I'm going to say I came post-breach. And I know there's quite a few lessons learned. There was the majority and minority reports issued. There's all the audits that were issued, and that's what I've been going off of. And again, trying to apply those to prioritize the next steps to be able to suppress the threat and risk within OPM.
So why? You've been there now for enough time. You've seen the problems. You've probably been shocked by some of the deficiencies within the network. Why do you think that network got to where it was?
I would say based on those reports and information that was put in front of me, there were systematic failures within OPM that led to it.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.